The cultural factors behind the strong demand for antiques in the United States after the Civil War can be understood in the context of a world power on the rise, but with a very short national history. More complex is to understand the reasons for the phenomenon of artworks exported out of Italy after the unification in 1861 and the annexation of Rome in 1870. In late 19th century Rome, there was a network operating in the art market, acting almost undisturbed. Its affiliates were collectors, art dealers, and intermediaries, as well as many unconnected individuals. There was no scholar, archaeologist, or official who had not been called to give an opinion on a purchase, to write a report for the granting of an export permit, or to provide an estimate of the market value of an artwork. Among those who did not disdain to lend a hand to the overseas buyers, Rodolfo Lanciani is a personality of particular interest. Engineer and archaeologist of international renown, author of Storia degli scavi di Roma and Forma Urbis, Lanciani worked for the government, for the Rome City Council, and for the University La Sapienza. Lanciani held a special regard towards the United States after being invited in 1886 for a tour of lectures in the most prestigious North American university that conferred him honors and recognition. He spoke fluent English and married an American woman. This openness towards United States cultural institutions cost Lanciani his reputation. In 1889, the archaeologist was accused of having acted as an intermediary for the sale of numerous artifacts in the United States. The event represented a turning point in the career of Lanciani, who had to give up all his official duties except the position of university professor. Of the famous Lanciani inquiry, there is no trace in the official publications of the Ministry of Education. However, the documents were scrupulously safeguarded by Felice Barnabei, Deputy Director of Antiquities and Fine Arts and Archenemy of Lanciani. The report is partly published together with his diaries and can be consulted in the archives of the Library of Archaeology and History of Art in Rome. Ironically, the inquiry was undertaken because of the director of the New York's Metropolitan Museum, Count Luigi Palma di Cesnola, an Italian who certainly did not have as primary interest the protection of the antiquities in his country of origin. Cesnola informed the ambassador of the Italian legation in Washington about the activity of Lanciani in favor of the Boston Museum of Fine Arts and the Art Institute of Chicago. By examining the report of the Boston Museum of Fine Arts 1888, later catalogs, and mainly the documents that I had the chance to consult in Boston, it was possible to reconstruct Lanciani's role as intermediary. Probably as a result of earlier agreements, a reasonable amount of money was held at Lanciani's disposal at Rothschild Bank. Since December 1887, Lanciani corresponded with General Loring and Edward Robinson, respectively the president and the director of the Boston Museum, proposing works of art that he would provide on their behalf from the antiquities market of Rome. From this correspondence, only the letters written by Lanciani have been preserved. The letters show both the scientific rigor and the attention in providing information on the origin of the objects, as well as a particular interest for purchasing and dealing. Among the objects that the archaeologists bought between 1888 and 1889, we find a series of busts and a series of terracottas from near the banks of the Tiber. A second series of busts sold as item probably belonging to the Ludovisi collection. And a third series which contained, among other objects, a head of an African man about which Lanciani wrote, I quote, "By letting the Negro population of New England know that the portrait bust of one of their ancestors, some 2,000 years old, has just arrived from Italy, my lord, what crowds will assemble in the museum," I unquote. We also have various collections of artifacts from Rome and surroundings, of which Lanciani wrote, I quote, "In case the museum is not interested in purchasing them, I shall keep this object for myself. They are excellent for Christmas presents," I unquote. And finally, Lanciani sold a series of ceramics from southern Italy and a collection of Roman coins belonging from Julius Caesar down to Justinianus. We now move to Chicago. According to Cesnola, Lanciani purchased for the museum a number of vessels and marbles featuring in the 1889 museum catalog. Among these items, we find Greek vases, including a magnificent red figure crater from Nola and a black figure vase from Orvieto. In fact, these items were purchased by Hutchinson, president of the museum, and by William French, director of the Art Institute, during a visit in Italy. French kept a travel diary, now digitized and available online. In his notebook that you see reproduced, French was often citing Lanciani, who without any doubts offered the two men valuable advices and useful addresses. But there is more. In the documents I consulted at Newberry Library and the Art Institute in Chicago, I have traced a few letters in which Lanciani had a friendly correspondence with Hutchinson, advising him on the procedures for requesting an export permit, packing and shipping. The letters, which corroborate those archived in Rome, show that Lanciani had received a sum of money to spend on behalf of the Museum of Chicago. He, however, decided to send this sum back in 1890 because of the problems that the investigation were causing him. Meanwhile, by the 12th of March 1890, the report of the Ministerial Committee of Inquiry had been issued. The report focused on allegation against Lanciani, who in his capacity as government official was accused of traveling to America to seek business clients, grant excavations, and request a subscription for the Museo Nazionale Romano. Up until that point, Lanciani had not yet been able to defend himself. He did so in private with a letter to the Director of Antiquities and Fine Arts, Giuseppe Fiorelli, and officially with a statement of defense that just preceded the request for exemption from the service of the 30th December 1890. In both cases, Lanciani admitted that he had offered friendly consultancy to the directors of Boston and Chicago museums. He further revealed the renowned rivalry between Palma di Cesnola from the Boston Museum and Robinson from the Palma di Cesnola from the New York Museum and Robinson from the Boston Museum, and Cesnola's antipathy towards him. He claimed he provided consultancy for absolutely legal and traceable purchases. To conclude, I leave you with the words that Lanciani wrote to Loring, president of the Boston Museum, in a letter dated the 27th of February 1888, describing his contribution to the growth of overseas collections. You may be curious to know why I take such pleasure, such a real delight in making these little purchases for you or the Boston Museum. In a general line, when I can show a little gratitude for the glorious time I had in the States, I welcome the occasion. But there is also a personal, selfish consideration besides. The few dollars I have spent on your behalf have made me learn more about new finds, secret finds, clandestine finds that I should have learned by myself in 5 years. I have discovered places and dealers of the existence of which I never had a suspicion, and better than all, I have now the confidence of these men. I am no more an official of the state, a public inquisitor, etc. No, I am a collector myself. The consequence is that they don't lie anymore about the origin and the provenance of the objects, and that, as a rule, I am the first to know what happens underwater. You see, I am votre obligé.